What is happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Mile High on Broad Pass podcast. We have a great episode for you guys today. We're going to be discussing the quarterback landscape in the NFL going into the 2023 season. There's definitely some teams that are set to go, some teams that for sure need a quarterback. We got a lot of free agents out there. We got the draft upcoming. So we're going to kind of discuss how we kind of see this playing out, who's going to be starting for who come the first snap of next season. And I'm excited to kind of see how we play this out. I was looking over this, and there are a lot of teams out there that really need a quarterback. 32 teams in the NFL, and honestly, I could only come up with 12 or 13 that are probably set it and forget it. And even some of those might even make a change come after this season. But for this year, I think they're probably just not going to do anything. So first off, Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm doing even better because as an Eagles fan, I can tell you for a fact we are not going to be having a quarterback issue, and that's always the biggest problem in the NFL is if you have a quarterback issue. So we're good to go. I'm happy. I'm over mostly the Eagles losing the Super Bowl the other week. So, ready to get going.
Perfect. Well, fun fact, I know that Denver's also on my list of teams that aren't going to be moving off quarterback, but for different reasons. They very well could need a quarterback depending on how this season goes, but with a $108 million cap hit, if we cut him, Russ is not going anywhere this year. So buckle up. Hopefully he plays amazing because, again, he's on my list of top 10. I've already gotten a lot of heat for that, so we'll see how that goes down.
Buckle up and let's ride, guys, right?
All right. So I'm going to start it out. I got 13 teams that I think are just set and forget it. We're not going to spend any time really on them. These teams have a starting quarterback. They're not going to make any changes, and they're ready to go this year. That's going to be the Bills, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Bengals, the Browns, the Jags, the Eagles, the Cowboys, Cardinals, the Vikings, the Lions, and the Bears. These teams aren't going to be making any moves this offseason. They're not going to be doing anything significant. Who's going to be starting their quarterback? We're not going to waste any time talking about them. We know who's starting for those guys.
Yep.
I also think that there are 7 teams that don't have a starting quarterback right now, period. So no matter what, these 7 teams have to figure out something or they're rolling into the year with a backup. The Raiders, Colts, the Bucks, Panthers, the Saints, the Falcons, and the Commanders. Fun fact, that's the entire NFC South division. None of them have a starting quarterback as of today.
So you're saying you don't think Taysom Hill is a franchise quarterback? What?
I think we've all accepted he's a great gadget player, but starting quarterback for a season is probably not what that's going to be, right? So, so these guys need quarterbacks. Somebody's going to have to end up playing there. Some of those are pretty good jobs. Some of them I don't think are really good jobs at all. So we'll see who ultimately ends up playing in some of those jobs. So aside from those teams, we're going to spend some more time on the teams that definitely need a quarterback. But the rest of the league, I think, has some conversations to be had. And I've kind of looped, all of these teams into some categories based on how I kind of view those teams. So first off, we're going to start with a couple of teams. These 3 teams have a starting quarterback that played there last year. They played pretty good, but all 3 of these guys aren't under contract anymore. So something's going to happen with them. They're either going to get re-signed, they're going to tag him, or they're going to let him walk, and we're going to have to discuss who's going to ultimately end up playing there. Those 3 teams are the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, the Giants with Daniel Jones, and the Seahawks with Geno Smith. Mike, how do you see these 3 teams playing out?
Yeah, honestly, I don't see the Ravens going down the way that Lamar Jackson wanted to go down. That's for sure. I know that he's out there looking for Deshaun Watson type money. Rumors are that him and the Ravens are about $100 million off. That tells me that he's probably was offered about 150. He's probably looking for 250 guaranteed. I don't see that happening with the Ravens. So I think he either gets tagged or he walks.
I mean, so we can stop there and talk about the Ravens because here's how I see it. I heard the Ravens offered him 5 for 250, which is $50 million a year, which makes him one of the top 3 highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He wants it to be fully guaranteed. That's just not happening. I get Deshaun Watson got it. That's a weird situation. The Browns already got a ton of backlash for that. The NFL does not want to go to fully guaranteed contracts. Honestly, I don't want them to go to fully guaranteed contracts. I hate guaranteed contracts. You pay to play, and if you're not good, you're gone. And that's what I love about the NFL versus other sports where they just say, hey, here's a 10-year deal worth $400 million, and you can be crap in a year, get hurt, and it doesn't matter. You're still getting paid. So I like the contracts the way they're set up. I'm all for taking care of the players, but I want to see you perform too. And Lamar's not getting a fully guaranteed contract. His mom is his agent, and they have decided that's what they want. They're not going to get it. So I don't see the Ravens moving off of him.
No.
It's been a big talking point for a lot of people.
Okay.
I don't see it happening. So what I think is ultimately going to happen, he's going to get tagged because he's not going to sign a contract because he wants it guaranteed. They're not going to give it to him, and he's going to get tagged, and he's either going to sign and play on the tag, or they're going to roll up there with their Pro Bowler backup quarterback to start the season, and we'll see how it goes.
Now, I like that little dig there. Now, what do you think they're going to do then in terms of the tag? Do you think they're going to give him the exclusive or the non-exclusive? Do you think they're going to be able, someone's going to be able to trade for him or not?
I don't think that they want to trade him. I mean, I guess if it depends on the offer and who they'd be getting back, but I mean, I think the Ravens are built for a specific type of quarterback in game stand right now, and Harbaugh can change that around. But I don't think they want to be going through massive changes, especially if they're going to tag him. I think if they were going to look to trade him, and if they do, like it's going to happen way before the draft, early free agency, we're going to see them move him so they can figure out their quarterback. They're not going to wait on this, and I think that's what's they're going to throw the tag out early. Even if these teams are in conflict, they're not going to wait on him. Like they're going to tag him and say, "You're here." So,
fair enough.
Giants and Seahawks. I don't know where you're at with these two teams, Mike. I think both these teams get contracts done. Maybe some pushback from either side, but I think Geno wants to stay there. I think he kind of dipped off a little bit. So I think if they offered him a decent contract, I mean, crazy to say that, $30 million is a decent contract in the NFL nowadays.
$30 million a year?
Yeah, but if they offered him $25, $30 million a year, I think he signs it and he's happy. The 3 to 5 year deal, 20, 30, I think he signs it and he's happy to go. Maybe he gets a little bit more in the open market, but I think that he understands the system. He knows what he can be there. It's not all on him because they're going to run the ball more. I think he stays there. I think Daniel Jones thinks he's going to get a ton of money. I think at the end of the day, they're all just going to come down to the table and they're going to agree. Even if it becomes tag and then contract, I think he gets somewhere around that $30 million deal too. Again, for 3 years, just because of the leaps they've made. Again, if they're going to let him walk, it's a walk. I see your face.
Well, so my issue isn't so much with what you were saying. I agree with you in principle on the Giants. So I guess let's first start with the Seahawks. So I think with Geno, what I would like to see happen if I ran the Seahawks is I would rather give Geno a shorter contract in the sense that I would like to see him mentor a Jordan Love type of a guy, right? I think Geno has that, lack of ego that Aaron Rodgers doesn't, that I think he would humbly accept, 3 years at $90 million, where, the last year, maybe he's just purely mentoring some guy, right? I could see something like that. I would give Geno that kind of a contract. I wouldn't go into that 4 or 5 years. For me, that's a little too much. He hasn't been that good. And
he's older too.
Yeah, he's a little older. He's in his early 30s, so I wouldn't go that far with him personally. But yeah, with the Giants, the reason why I was making some faces there is I don't know if you were hearing any of the stories that were coming out these last couple of days. It sounds like Daniel Jones,
He wants 35.
I heard he wants 45.
No, well, he's not getting 45.
Right, I agree.
30, maybe they give him 35. I mean, look, they didn't give him the 5th year because he was so bad for years. And the ball's there and he looked a lot better, but a lot better doesn't give you massive money. So,
yeah, no, I'm with you for the most part, but I think that the issues could come down to the fact that he thinks he's worth more than he actually is. If he's I can't tell if it's I'm asking for more, but I'll really settle for less kind of a thing. So he's just trying to elevate it. Like he's happy with, 37. So he's saying, hey, let's start at, 45 and let's meet me at 37. Or does he genuinely think he's worth 45 million? If he thinks he's worth 45 million, I'm tagging him and that's it. Right. So I think that could be a little bit different. We'll see what he wants. But I don't know for sure if they get a contract done with him as much as I'm confident as I am in the Seahawks get one done with Geno.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Daniel Jones is starting quarterback for the Giants come week 1. Sure. I think a contract will probably get worked out at some point. I think this 45, a lot of that's agent speak. He wants to try and get his guy as much as he can. They're not going to get that. If it gets to that point, they'll tag him before he walks in free agency and figure it out down the road, June, July. I think something gets done eventually. Even if not, he's going to be the starter for the Giants week 1 of the NFL.
No, I think we're in agreement there. I definitely think he's probably the starter week 1. Whether he gets a contract done or not, we'll see.
Another chunk of guys, teams I don't think we're going to have a ton of discussion on, but these are teams that all have starting quarterbacks. that are all in some way, shape, or form hurt, coming off of last season. All 100% healthy, there'd be no question these teams would be in that no question they're not going to make changes starter category. But with the injuries, there's some question marks, and what are we going to see with these teams? So first, we got the Dolphins. Tua, concussions. Who knows where he's at?
Yeah.
The Dolphins have said he's our starter. We're going to rock with him, and that's pretty much. I mean, they've stood pat. Tua's our guy. He's going to be our guy. He's going to be fine. We're going to be past these. He's going to be the starter. We got the Rams, Stafford having his issues, the spinal cord thing, the concussions. Again, if he's fully healthy, he's their starter. But if he's not fully healthy, last year he had the elbow going in. Now he's got this stuff going in. Now he's saying, hey, I'm fine. This is the first offseason. I'm not going to have any injuries. I can get a full true offseason in. So we'll see what they do. And the last team is the Niners. All right. Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. I don't care what side of the fence you want to be on. We can have that debate another day. But one of those two dudes would have been the starter, fully healthy. Both of them hurt. There's question marks on that too. So personally, I don't think any major changes happen with any of these teams. Maybe they sign some backup guy, someone that you trust if you have to, if these guys are still coming back or not healthy or get hurt again. But I don't see any of these teams looking for a new starter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for the most part, I think the only thing that's of worthy conversation would be if Tua is like so brain damaged that he is forced to retire. I think that's the only way that the Dolphins make any changes. The 49ers, it's going to be a QB competition going into the preseason, assuming that Brock Purdy is healthy enough that he can throw. And then the Rams, I think the only form of, oddball you can even try to throw in there is the fact that they traded for Baker Mayfield, which in retrospect was a really weird move because they were not a good team. They were locked in that they were not going to be a good team all year. So why trade for Baker when your season's done? I didn't really understand why they did that. Like the only thing I can think of is that they were trying to, stick it to the Niners, which at the end of the day, I suppose that they were okay without him. But I don't know. It was a weird move. Well, I guess they didn't trade for him. They just claimed him off the waiver. So maybe that, I don't know, still a little odd to me, but we'll see.
Yeah. So I look at these guys, some of these high-end backups, Gardner Minshew, Baker Mayfield, number one overall pick, regulated to that high-end backup conversation.
Better than what Sam Darnold's doing.
Yeah, I could see one of these guys ending up with one of those teams as one of those like, hey, you're probably not going to be a starter. We'll give you decent money, to kind of be there if we need you if something happens. A name we could get into later, maybe an Andy Dalton to Miami, to see what happens with Tua's head.
I don't think, is he able to go down there?
Yeah, maybe. I don't think they want to do anything. I don't think the Rams want to do anything. Backup, maybe. The Niners are the bigger question because who knows where the health is with those two guys. But I think Trey Lance is supposed to be healthy. So they could do nothing. They could end up backup if they're doing something. Those are those guys.
For sure.
The next group of four, all right, these are teams, they have young quarterbacks within their first 2 or 3 years, and there's some question marks maybe about him. Hey, is this our guy? Is it not our guy? Do we need to start looking for other options? Are we going to, run with this guy for another year? None of these guys are up on contracts. And so they have the opportunity where they can either say, hey, you got to cut bait and get out of here, or let's take this another year. We think we got something here. Let's take these one at a time. First team on this list, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett, first-round draft pick last year. Played okay, I guess. Where do you see them going?
I don't know. I didn't think he was very good last year, personally. I wasn't very impressed with him. I thought
nice.
Yeah, that's okay. But I don't know. He developed that nickname of Ken Pickett, which was really bad. At one point, he had something along the lines of like 3 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, or just something really bad. But all that being said, it doesn't matter. The Steelers aren't making any moves off of him. They drafted him in the first round 1 year ago. He came on a very little bit at the end of the year where he stopped fumbling and throwing so many interceptions, but I don't know. I'm not overly impressed. I think next year is probably we'll have a better conversation around are they going to move off of him or not.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's 1 year too soon for them to be making any real decisions on Kenny Pickett. I don't think there's too many teams that need a quarterback, for a feeding frenzy in the free agency pool, and I don't think they're in a pick position to really go after anybody who's honestly going to be any better than Kenny Pickett's going to be.
No.
All right. The second team I think could be a little bit more discussion, and that's the New England Patriots. Mac Jones is there. Bailey Zappi's there. Mac Jones is clearly their starter, I guess, depending on, what kind of a mood Bill decides he wants to be in that day. So
he won't tell us, but
yeah, and we're not going to know, right? They could have 7 quarterbacks on the roster. Bill won't tell us who's going to take the snap until the start of the second half. So, what do you think happens here?
Honestly, I think this is an interesting one. I know what I would do if I were the Patriots. I think Mac Jones has been pretty much almost exactly who we all thought he was going to be when he got drafted. Day one, we said he is the most NFL style, pro style ready quarterback with the lowest ceiling, right? Like he has the highest floor, but the lowest ceiling. And I think he has pretty much been just that. He was mediocre his rookie year. He was fine. He took his team to the playoffs. I didn't think he was anything special, despite him somehow making the Pro Bowl, because that's a joke. But we don't have to get into all that right now. But he was a whatever kind of quarterback. He was a game manager for most of the year. And then something really weird happened where they played the Bills in that monsoon of a game. He was limited to 2 or 3 passes that game or whatever that was, and 4 passes that game. He has not been the same quarterback since then, man. I don't know. I'm out on Mac Jones personally. I would move off of him. I think Bailey Zappi has shown to be as good of a quarterback, and I don't think Bailey Zappi is a very good quarterback, if I'm being honest. I think that they're both subpar starters. I think if those guys are your starters going into the year, you've got a problem. You've got question marks, and I would be ready to move off of him, but I think they're going to give him another year.
Yeah, so I for sure think he gets another year. Look, he regressed a little bit, But look, his rookie year, he was exactly who we thought he was going to be, right? He's not super athletic, but he's a smart guy, and he can play team manager pretty freaking well. Last year definitely regressed, but I mean, honestly, I could chalk that up to the fact that you had Matt Patricia playing offensive consultant because they didn't actually have a coordinator.
That was weird. And Joe Judge was also there too.
And Joe Judge, yeah,
the immortal Joe Judge.
Co consultants to the offense. Look, they brought in Bill O'Brien to be their offensive coordinator. Horrible GM, but he spent the last few years in Alabama with Nick Saban. They're really close with Bill. He's now up there. He was the OC with Mac Jones 2 years ago, so he knows how to get the most out of Mac Jones in that situation. So I think they stand pat with Mac Jones for at least another year and kind of see where they end up when the dust settles. But I agree that I don't know if there's much of a difference between the two, but I think Mac Jones is their starter. I think that we see him go back to what he was his rookie year, which is a fine game manager and not much more than that when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit less optimistic on you on Mac Jones.
All right. Next up, the New York Jets. Starting quarterback, number 3 overall pick, Zach Wilson. And
Mike White.
Mike White's a free agent.
Right. I don't even.
So, what do the Jets do with Zach Wilson? Are they sold that Zach Wilson is their guy? Are they going to give it another year, or are they out? Are they ready to find something new?
They better be out. I am out on him. I was out on him day one when they drafted him. I don't even think he was number 3 pick. I think he was number 2 pick.
I think he did go 2. Yeah, I think that was on me. I think Trey Lance.
No, I didn't put that together until as I was speaking through this.
I caught it as I said it, but I was just hoping it would fly off the radar.
Yeah, right. But yeah, no, man. Like I was all out on Zach Wilson the day that he was drafted. I didn't get that pick in the first place. I don't get it. I don't think he's very good. I think he has had some really bad press conferences, especially when the offense scored, 3 points and they lost because the defense gave up 3 points and then they gave up a special teams touchdown. He was asked, do you feel like you let down the defense? He says no and basically dismisses it to the next question. That's a rough media. The fans really don't like him. You and I watched a handful of games together last year, and every time that he was off the field, he was getting booed. Every time he took the field, he was getting booed. 3 and outs, getting booed. Like they don't like him. The organization, and to Robert Saleh's credit, they have protected him in saying that they think that they're going to be his guy moving forward. I don't believe him though, and I know I certainly wouldn't move forward with him I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we can listen to Robert Saleh says, "Oh, we're going to ride with Zach Wilson." Or we can listen to the Jets, who said that they're going to spend any amount of money to bring a quarterback in next year. And Zach Wilson's going to give them hell in practice, which means he's going to carry water really, really well.
Yes.
If they even keep him on the roster. So, yeah, I think the Jets they're in quarterback market. I think they look at their defense, they look at some of their young weapons on the offense, and they say, we need a quarterback. All right. And Zach Wilson is clearly not the guy. They need to find somebody else. So this is the first team that we've really discussed that's going to get thrown in that needs a quarterback conversation. How about the Texans? All right. They got Davis Mills, started for 2 years. He's looked pedestrian, I guess. I mean, I don't even think they really wanted him to be the starter. That's just kind of how it ended up happening when the season started. Do you see them rocking with Davis Mills next year, or getting out of the General Mills game pretty quick and in a hurry?
Yeah, I mean, if they're smart, they get out on him. I think that they took him because of the whole Deshaun Watson uncertainties a couple years ago. He looked fine as a rookie, which made everyone go, okay, let's give him another year. And I think he earned that second year this year as a starter, but they look bad this year. They should have the number 1 overall pick, but somehow Lovie Smith and the and crew ended up winning that game. But it is what it is. And
Gave him the old FU on his way out the door, right?
Absolutely.
I'm going to make sure you're going to fire me. I want to make sure you don't.
You are not getting that number 1 overall pick. Yeah, so
classic Texans move.
Very classic. So no, I think if they're smart, they move on. I think they end up drafting somebody at whether it's the number 2 spot or whether they trade with the Bears to move up to the number 1 spot, depending on if the Bears are getting any trade rumors of somebody moving up and taking the guy that the Texans are looking at. But I think that they go to the draft. I think it's probably Stroud or Young is 1-2. I don't know. We'll see. But I got a feeling they're going with one of those two in the draft this year.
Look, I think it's a clean start in Houston. DeMeco Ryans, new head coach, new philosophy. I think they're going to wipe the slate and say, hey, you're here, DeMeco. Who do you want? And let's build a new team. They clearly know that they got to start over, and the best way to do that is get a young quarterback in here. And when you can pick in the top 2 and you need to rebuild, that's what you do. So I think they take a quarterback as well. So we'll throw them in that pile of these guys need a quarterback. The last 2 teams that we haven't discussed have starters. To me, I think there's some question marks. We'll start with an easy one. The Green Bay Packers and the Aaron Rodgers, who I think today came out of his dark hole in hiding but hasn't given anyone a decision. 3rd year in a row of drama. Does he want to stay? Does he want to go back? Now it sounds like the Packers are out, right? And it's funny because 3 years ago, he was going to Denver. Green Bay gets cold feet. They pull it out. That was reliable sources. They pull it out. Last year, you get the rumors all over again. Where's he going? Maybe he's going back to Denver. And Green Bay's fighting tooth and nail to keep Aaron Rodgers there. He gets what he wants, but he loses Adams, and now he's there, and he realizes it kind of sucks. And now he's doing the same thing he's done for 3 years in a row now. I think the Packers are just fed up, and that's kind of the rumors that are coming out. Is they both have just decided they want to part and do something else. So I think Aaron Rodgers is gone, but I'm going to do you one better. That I say they don't even add anybody else. They're going to rock with Jordan Love.
No, I think you've got that one spot on, man. I don't see any way that this gets resolved peacefully or quickly. I think that they want him gone. I don't know whether he wants to go or not. I can't tell. The guy is so self-centered and so egotistical. I think a lot of this stemmed from the fact that they drafted Jordan Love 4 years ago or whatever that was, 3 years ago, and he just never got over it. And I think that he was at one point trying to hold them hostage because he won an MVP the year that they drafted him. So he said, all right, you guys dangled this over my head. Now I'm going to dangle this over your head. And then he won another MVP and he dangled it over them again. And then he did it last year because he thought that he was going to have a good year this year. And I think this year, since he crapped the bed, he's kind of like, well, I don't want them to have any leverage. I want them to want me. And they just evidently don't. And I don't blame them. I think he's just too self-centered. I would move on from him. I think you need to figure out what you have in Jordan Love. You moved up in the draft to get him. I think you have to at least figure out what he is or isn't. And so I would move off of Aaron Rodgers if I were them and start Jordan Love this year.
All right, last team, Tennessee Titans.
Yep.
Malik Willis is not it.
Nope.
Tannehill is hurt or healthy or not it or is it or this a lot. They're the last team on the list because I got so many question marks on. I don't even know who this team is at the end of the day. I didn't even think Tannehill was that
Derrick
hurt
Henry.
last year, but every time I turned around, he was gone, and so I don't know. What are we doing with the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Titans, I'm looking for somebody, whether I'm looking in the draft or whether I'm looking to get a big name free agent like a Lamar or a Derek Carr. That's the direction I would go if I were them. I agree with you. I didn't like Malik Willis going into this draft. You really didn't like Malik Willis
Nope.
going into this draft.
Nope.
Um,
And I was right.
Yeah, done. Tannehill has been very interesting as a career arc. I mean, I thought he was super underrated in Miami. He would throw for like 4,000 yards and like 25 touchdowns, and everyone was like, "Yeah, he's terrible." And then he ended up getting benched and then moved on to the Titans, where he then started off the back half of that season with after Mariota took them to the playoffs. He looked really, really good. He got a big contract. Everyone said this was stupid. He then played really well the next year, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, maybe he is really good." And then since then, he's been very just not good. Yeah, it's been a steady decline. I think he's just a little bit older. I think he's just past his prime. I would move on from him. I don't think Malik Willis is the guy. I think we've seen enough from Malik Willis to know he's not Lamar Jackson 2.0. He's not even Justin Fields 2.0. He's just not a good guy, a good player, and I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. I would move on and either pick up a big name free agent or move up in the draft and try to get one of those young studs, whether it be Stroud, Young, Levis, or Richardson.
So I agree. Yeah, I think the Titans need to look at somebody. I got some interesting ideas on who that could be. Look, I think at the end of the day, if nothing falls their way, maybe they just run it back with Tannehill another year. I don't know if they're going to be uber aggressive in going after somebody, but I also think that they could be a team that decides, hey, it's time to walk, and we could see. There's always some surprises. I think they could be less surprising if they're the ones who decide, hey, we need to make some changes here. So, all right, so here's what we're gonna do. We got our teams. We need people. I'm gonna run through some names. These are the free agents we got, and then let's go team by team. Who we think is going to end up with who on their roster. If we got any time at the end of the show, we'll discuss some of the most key free agents. So here's what we got left. We already said Lamar's a free agent, but he's not going to be available. Derek Carr to me is the number one most interesting free agent. He's going to be the most highest paid and the highly touted quarterback coming out of this free agency class. Yep. Daniel Jones, he's going to stay where he's at. Jimmy G, another bigger name guy, is going to be on the free agency market. Gino going back where he is. And then we're left with guys like Sam Darnold, Jacoby Brissett, Andy Dalton. We already kind of mentioned Mayfield and Mike White, and these guys are probably suited for more of a backup role. Maybe one of them gets a start job if somebody really needs somebody, but those guys I kind of think end up running over there. And then you got in the draft, obviously, CJ Stroud and Young. These are the number 1 and 2, depending on who you talk to, quarterbacks in the draft. Levis and Richardson, I think could sneak into the first round just because of the demand for quarterback. Yep. A lot of scouts have them, second round draft pick kind of graded, but again, it's quarterback, league. So I don't see those guys sneaking up. So that's kind of the pool we have to go with. And guess what? There's way more teams than there are names on this piece of paper. So
sure are.
If we don't have somebody for them, let's just say I got no freaking idea who's going to end up playing quarterback there, and we'll leave it at that. So let's just knock out the hardest division first, just for fun. Let's go with the Bucs and the start in the NFC South. What do you think the Buccaneers end up doing at quarterback next year?
So if I'm Derek Carr, I would want to go to a situation where I can stick it to the Raiders and show them, hey, I was not the problem. Best way to do that is to go to a team that has good wide receivers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Russell Gage is there, and whatever you want to make a Julio Jones, whatever. But you got 3 guys who can all definitely play wide receiver. You have a great defense, check, and then you have a terrible division, check, and you have a terrible conference where there's about 3 good teams in the entire conference. Check. If I'm Derek Carr, I'm going to the Bucs. So if the Bucs are smart, I think that they go after Derek Carr.
Man, I'm completely opposite. I think the Bucs are going to go in the draft.
Yeah.
They got a little bit of a later pick because they're picking 19. So I could see them being one that jumps for one of these Levis or Richardson guys. Here's how I see it. The Buccaneers, as of today, are $56.5 million over the cap. They are in the worst cap position in the entire league.
True.
Derek Carr is going to get paid. He was already due $40 million the start of last week if they didn't cut him. He's going to get at least that to go somewhere else. I don't know how the Bucks can come up with that. I agree with your point, but I think at some point the Bucks have to go, look, it was a fun run with Tom Brady. We got to figure it out. I don't know if the coach is the right guy. They got some players. They're $56 million over the cap. They had some issues last year. Maybe you got to rebuild. I don't know if they're going to do that. That's how I think they should go. Let's rebuild. Let's pick a guy later in the draft. Let's start this rebuild process early instead of late like most teams do.
I think you're probably more right than I am. I think that would be fun.
I like your points. Those are all valid reasons. And look, if the Bucks weren't $56 million, because I had a list of Derek Carr. That's who we're going to talk about a good time at the end of the show. And I like the idea. I just don't see how they make it happen.
Yeah.
What about the Panthers?
I think the Panthers go young. This is probably honestly most likely where I think there's a good chance Derek Carr goes here, but I would go young if I were the Panthers. I don't think they're ready to win yet, so I don't think going after Derek Carr makes a whole lot of sense. I think they have one good wide receiver in DJ Moore. They have okay to not no names at the rest of the wide receiver positions. Their running backs, it's kind of done by committee with Hubbard and Foreman. Like, they're fine. The defense is good. Brian Burns is very good. But I don't know. I just don't. I don't think the Panthers are quite ready to win yet. I would go young. I would take and they have a good draft pick. I would either move up or stay still and get one of those other guys in the first round.
Yeah. So I wrote no freaking idea. Look, they have some cap issues. They don't really have a ton of talent. I don't know if they're going to pull a big name wide receiver. They're 9th in the draft. I think by then the two big names are gone, and you're not going to pick those other guys there. So maybe they draft back. I just think that I don't know what they're doing. I don't have any idea. With the Saints, another team, $47 million over the cap. So to me, maybe they could sneak in a Sam Darnold or a Mike White. They draft 29th. I don't know what they're going to do either. I wrote Sam Darnold because maybe that's the only place he can end up, but he might just as easily go back to the Panthers. I mean, they're not going to be able to draft anybody worth anything. They don't have any money to pay anybody worth anything. They're kind of in limbo.
I'm kind of in the similar spot where you are, but I'm going with Philly's backup. I think that Gardner Minshew could go there. I think that Minshew kind of played himself out of a big contract in that Saints game. I think that everyone kind of saw the first game that he played against the Cowboys. We put up like 40 on them. Yeah, he had several turnovers, but we still put up 40 on them. And so everyone kind of was like, okay, maybe Minshew can still be a starter somewhere in the league where he was with the Jaguars for a little bit. And then he poo-pooed the bed against the Saints. I think that ironically enough, the Saints may end up taking him because I think, like I said, he's probably going to be relatively cheap. I think you can get him for a really good deal on like a 1-year deal or something like that. If they don't do that, then they're probably going to find a way to try to rock with Taysom Hill. But if it's not one of those two, I don't know what they're doing.
Falcons, I put Jacoby Brissett. I think he could be a star in the league, but it's going to go to a team that isn't super serious already right now. To me, that's the Falcons. They're in a spot kind of like the Panthers where they kind of are in a position to draft, but none of those guys are going to be there. So I could see Brissett ending up there.
See, I would like to see Jimmy G go there. I think that would kind of work with their system, with what they're trying to do. I think Jimmy G's a serviceable quarterback. I think it gives them time because I think they can then take a quarterback in the second or the third round to see if they can't maybe draft somebody and develop them behind Jimmy G for a couple of years. That's kind of what the Jimmy G special has been these last couple of years. They have Kyle Pitts there, who's a very nice tight end that for whatever reason they opted not to use this year. But they also just gave up their best receiver who's suspended all year. So I don't think they're quite ready to win. I think bringing in Jimmy G to mentor somebody probably makes a lot of sense.
Definitely. All right. Commanders, your home division. This is my spot. I got Derek Carr going to the Commanders.
I feared that's where this was happening.
I mean, look, they got solid wide receivers. They got some decent running game action. They have cap room more than anybody else who really needs to quarterback.
Yep.
I mean, it all kind of lines up that this is the spot he's gonna. They weren't the top team on my list for where I think he fits the best. But I'm looking at him like they got everything that he could need and they got the money. I think Derek Carr ends up with the Commanders.
Yeah, And on top of that, they also have, I think he's still a good coach in Ron Rivera, but it seems like the jury's kind of out on him right now. Some people are kind of down on him. But honestly, man, I have no idea if, I don't know. I got no freaking clue. You never know with Dan Snyder. He's a weirdo. He's a jerk. Nobody likes him. Half the league wants him out of and being an owner. And he's just, I don't know, man. He's just not one of those guys that ever ends up doing anything that makes any sense. So I'm not even going to try to get in Dan Snyder's head and pretend like I know what they're going to do next year.
So these next two teams, they're in the same division, so we're just going to knock them out easy peasy because I don't think there's too much discussion about either of these teams. So Texans and the Colts, they pick 2 and 4 respectively. These both are going to draft a quarterback. It's going to come down to who do they like more, whether it's going to be C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. They both make sense to draft a quarterback young. They're both top 5 pick options, assuming nobody makes any crazy moves, which we're not assuming for this conversation. Those guys are going to draft the 1 and 2 quarterbacks in this class. Any disagreement there?
No, I agree with you, and I especially think that it makes sense for the Colts because they've tried these last handful of years to draft to trade for a slightly older guy in Rivers and Wentz and Ryan, and it hasn't worked. And I think the franchise, and if not the franchise, the fans are certainly fed up with that. So yeah, I agree. I think that they have to go young.
All right,
not Bryce Young, just young draft.
New York Jets. I know this has been floated around, but Rodgers to the Jets, to me, man, there's where there's smoke, there's fire. They said they're willing to pay anything. They will give it up. He can go there. They don't have to play. I mean, it just makes sense for that to be the move. They get him out of the conference. They're going to get a boatload from the Jets. The Jets want him. I don't know if it's the best place for Rodgers. Still got young receivers. All right. They're going to probably try more of a run game, which could be good for him in this game in his rear. But I think the New York media will eat up a guy like Rodgers who's a little sensitive. I don't know if it's necessarily the best place for him, but everybody that needs somebody, if Rodgers is going to go somewhere, that's the spot I see Rodgers going.
See, but I think the media actually might be nice to him because when was the last time the Jets had a relevant quarterback? Chad Pennington? I mean,
New York.
The Jets? I don't know, man. I don't know, man. I think you're getting the Giants confused with the Jets. I think the Giants media would be thrilled to have him. I don't think they care. I agree with you. I think that it makes the most sense. They have a ton of money. They have some very good weapons. While yes, they are young, very good weapons. They're getting Breece Hall back. They have a great defense. I think that makes all the sense in the world.
All right, so this last guy, Jimmy G, is my last big name guy left. 2 teams left: the Titans and the Raiders.
Titans.
I got him with the Titans too. That was my why. If he makes a move, I think he could go to the Titans. He's young enough to develop some of these younger wide receivers. He doesn't need to do a lot because they're going to let Derrick Henry run the rock. I mean, look, I think the Raiders rock with Stidham. I get the McDaniels and thing. He could go there, but it's how I see both those teams playing out.
Agreed.
All right. Well, guys, I hope you guys had a good time with us today. We're going to be jumping into another combo tomorrow. Top 10 running backs. See you then.